how's it going, everybody? Scott Spreitzer here. He's Tony George, and we are DocSports.com with this week's six-pack, 3 college football plays, 3 from the NFL. Going to get to them in just a second. Hey, don't forget, if you've yet to become a member over at DocSports.com and just want to give it a trial run, it's a real cool way to do it. You click on that link below the video, get yourself set up for a free $60 account. You can then use those free $60 on any of Tony's daily packages or any of mine. I mean, we're talking not just football. We're talking about basketball, NBA, college is underway, soccer, UFC, what have you, over at DocSports.com. You can use those free $60. Great way to give DocSports.com a trial run. 6 games to talk about, Tony. We said it last week that the bowl committee, selection committee, championship, whatever you want to call it, playoff committee, idiotic committee, needs an oddsmaker as part of that little committee, because putting Tennessee number 1, Georgia number 3 was, as Mike Tyson would say, ludicrous. Anyway, we saw what happened. 27-13. 27-13 did not tell the score, or did not tell the story. Georgia wiped that team out start to finish. 27-13 was much closer than the actual game. And I'm not saying Tennessee can't come back and play a good game against Georgia, but that's the way it was. And so I'm looking at this week, and I'm saying, all right, we got TCU in the top 4. Let's talk a little TCU Horned Frogs. They're traveling to Austin. Love that city. To take on the Texas Longhorns. Texas laying 7 for the most part. I did see a couple of 7.5 still out there on Wednesday morning, total 65. Now, this has nothing to do, this comment about who's going to win this game. But I'm just going to say this. Here we go again. The playoff committee has a team ranked 4th. So if the season ended after last week, TCU's in the playoffs, they are a 7-point dog to a team with 3 losses. And not only that, but at 7, even if this was on a neutral field, TCU would be the underdog. What say you about the TCU-Texas game, Mr. Tony George?
Well, I'll tell you what, the bowl committee has Texas 18th and TCU
That's
the
ridiculous.
top 4.
Yeah.
Do I trust Texas? If this was on the road, I'd be all over TCU because Texas can't win on the road. But this is in Austin, and it looks too easy to take TCU plus the 7 here. And, I was looking at this game from 6 different directions. And last week in that Tennessee-Georgia game we talked about, I touted the under, which happened. It usually does in a big game. This is sitting at 65, TCU 7. If you take a look at TCU's last 6 games, 34-41, 38-43, 38-43. They hung 55 on Oklahoma. Texas hung 49 on them and didn't allow a point. I think the number's sharp, Scott. I think they are a touchdown better in Austin. If you put a gun to my head in this game, I'm telling you right now, I could only take Texas. You take a look at the power numbers, they're inside the top 8. teamrankings.com, you can look at some other rankings outfits. And TCU's had the benefit the last 3 weeks of playing teams with backup quarterbacks too.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I just think here, I think this is one that this is a huge game for Sarkisian. This is a huge game for Texas. They've got 3 losses. They've looked good. They had Alabama back on their heels and by the short and curlies in here in Austin up season. Alabama, which is a better team than TCU. Should have won it. I think this is, we're not putting grandma's bonds on it. We're not selling what's left of your 401k right now. But what we are doing is this is a small lean. I'd go with Texas here. I'd say a 41-31 final wouldn't surprise me. You might lean a little bit on the over here as well, Scott. There's going to be a lot of scoring. The one thing about it is it might be a really good game to in-game wager on. One thing about TCU, they're a second-half team, and Texas tends to give it up in the second half of their games. So maybe depending on what happens in the first half, say that Texas hung, say it's 28-10. I don't know I doubt if TCU can close the gap totally, but if there's a decent number at halftime, you might want to take a look at TCU because And by the way, Scott, we're not saying that TCU doesn't have merit. They've beat
Absolutely.
five ranked. They're unbeaten, and they beat 5 ranked teams this year. Some of them very convincingly. Other ones just like, oh boy, they barely got by that one. But so I'm not saying for all the Horned Frogs fans out there that you got a crappy team, because you don't. I just think the matchups in this game all favor Texas. We're going to switch gears.
Yeah, listen. Well, I was going to throw something out there real quick, because I wanted to mention, my sarcasm at the top of this, or my cynicism, whatever you want to call it, isn't directed towards TCU. It's directed towards the playoff selection committee.
Oh yeah,
who just and TCU, if they win this game, are you going to be shocked? No, neither of us would be shocked.
No.
But when I look at, you mentioned TCU facing a bunch of teams that have had injured quarterbacks during the course of the game and have had to go to back. I mean, Kansas State was up 28-10 on TCU.
Yeah.
Adrian Martinez was lost after 2 passes. So you got Will Howard, who's capable. He comes in, he gets knocked out of the game. It's 28-10 K-State. By the time Will Howard was able to come back in the game for the Wildcats, mojo, momentum, all of that stuff had switched sidelines.
Yeah.
And TCU had it, and that was it. They ended up winning that football game. So they've had good fortune, which you need to win a title and all that kind of stuff. But the bottom line is, my sarcasm is towards the selection committee. I like you. I like what you're saying here. I like Texas to win this game by about 10 points. I think that's going to be the final margin of this one.
And on the other side of the coin, would it surprise me if TCU won the game 43-40 with Texas having 4 turnovers or something crazy? No.
Mm-hmm.
But it's kind of like winning. It's kind of like winning a 4-man scramble in golf. If you're going to go 17 or 18 under and win in a 4-man scramble in a field of 48 teams, somebody's going to have to chip one in. Somebody's going to have to sink a 60-foot putt. You're going to have a little bit of luck on your side. And TCU, as you mentioned, has just had a lot of good fortune this year. And I think sooner or later that well runs dry. And Texas is probably, Texas is the best 3-loss team in the country. I can guarantee you that. So I think it's going to be an interesting game. But at the end of the day, I think TCU's luck runs out. You cannot suck in the first half of a game and attempt to come back, on the road against a team like Texas versus being at home against Kansas State and getting a shot at a third-string quarterback.
Right.
That scenario, it could exist if Texas's top 2 guys go out, but I doubt it. So that being said, we'll switch gears to the SEC and Alabama. Well, I tell you what, just being anybody in the SEC having a weekly schedule is just a murderer's row, for everybody involved in this conference, and including Georgia, the game we're going to talk about next. But Bama at Ole Miss, lines moved to 12, Scott, for Alabama, taking on Lane Kiffin, who's got a good team. Surprisingly, has a very good running game there as well. And the total here at, I can't read my writing. I think it's 56.5. Is that right?
64, about 64.5. Yeah.
Oh yeah. 60. Yeah. Oh, my bad. 64.5. But Bama rolls in here, shunned by the committee, out of the BCS Final Four talk, and will be for the rest of the year, barring that Georgia loses out and everybody loses out in front of them, which ain't going to happen. But interesting game here. And Kiffin, he's given Saban a few fits over the years since he left as their OC there. Scott, your thoughts?
Yeah, first of all, it's crazy how some are like almost saying that, oh boy, Nick Saban should retire soon. I've heard a couple of former players. I heard Paul Feinbaum, taking it to Nick Saban because he's lost 2 games this year. I did some shows with Paul Feinbaum 7, 8, 10 years ago, whatever it was. And I'm like shaking my head because, listen, he's a good guy. He's a talent on the air, but Alabama sure has done him well. If you think Nick Saban doesn't all of a sudden have what it takes to lead his team to undefeated seasons or 1-loss seasons into, championship 4s, it's a situation where I think you're not paying real close attention, or you're trying to get some attention for yourself. Because listen, this team's a couple of plays and turnovers and penalties away from 9-0. And I get it. You could say they could have also lost 2 more games to A&M in Texas. Yeah, they're undisciplined this season, but I still trust in Nick Saban that he knows what the heck he's doing on the football field. So having said that, they have won and covered 8 in a row off a straight up loss. But the caveat here on that is that there's no championship carrot dangling in front of their eyes right now to make them think, okay, we got to get back on track. We got to go up there and kick some rear end because, if we win this game, we're right back in the championship mix. It's not the case this year. And we're not used to seeing that out of Alabama and their players. The fact that, they don't have the motivation of a potential national championship on the line after a loss. So they're undisciplined. They've committed about 80 penalties on the season, Tony. We've seen them commit 17 or 18 in one game. The 2 losses, by the way, both came in the final seconds, or in Tennessee's case, in overtime. Ole Miss runs the up-tempo offense. You did mention they run the football, but they also like to snap the ball rather quickly. It's not unlike Tennessee. So I think they keep the pressure on what has been an undisciplined Alabama football team. They've had 2 weeks to prepare. I'm gonna say Ole Miss gets the cover here. They hang this number. I think I get why it's 12, obviously, why the line makers have to make it what it is, but I think it's a little bit too high, just talking from a betting angle, not a bookmaker's angle, a betting angle. And so I think Ole Miss hangs this number.
I agree.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I agree. I think Ole Miss is going to give them a hell of a ball game. I think it's a touchdown ball game one way or the other. I really do. I would not be surprised, as I wouldn't be if TCU beat Texas. If some things go wrong for Texas, TCU can beat them, and it wouldn't be you talking about a 12-point underdog here. But I don't know about you. I wouldn't be shocked if it ends up being 38-35 Ole Miss. I wouldn't shock me, but I think that's way too many points and a little disrespectful to Ole Miss. And Kiffin has a way, whether you like him or not, he's a good football coach. He's a great play caller. Players respond to him. And, when you were talking about that, I know we're going to get on to another SEC game here, but just leading into it, as you had mentioned earlier, Feinbaum, he was in love with Alabama forever, interested because he graduated from Tennessee. But at the end of the day, you're talking about, well, it might be time for Saban to hang him up. The game's passed him by and all this stuff. Let me tell you something. You're in the SEC. If you don't play perfect against some of these teams, you don't win. He didn't play perfect against Texas, and somehow he got a win there. So let's take Michigan, who has the 71st ranked strength of schedule. Why don't you run them through the SEC with the same schedule Alabama has, and let me know if they're still unbeaten. I don't give a rat's ass how good their running back is. We're going to find out against Nebraska. He's going to have about 280 yards. He might set a school record by halftime. Yeah. But at the end of the day, you got to remember where Alabama and Tennessee and Georgia, some at Ole Miss, Mississippi State, some of these LSU, some of these teams, the SEC is a completely different animal than almost any other Power 5 conference out there, Scott.
Absolutely. Week in, week out, you got to bring your best almost every single week of the season. You can't stumble against Rutgers for 3 quarters. If you stumble against most of these SEC teams for 3 quarters, you got that big fat L hanging over your head when you walk off the field. You don't all of a sudden bust out for 21 straight or whatever. Absolutely agree. Yeah. Georgia's at Mississippi State. The Bulldogs laying 16.5, total 53.5. So we're staying in that powerful SEC. Mike Leach's offense has been stifled in big step-up games against Alabama and LSU, where they combined for a grand total of 22 points and averaged 290 yards of offense. And, Tony, you can even throw Mark Stoops' defensive mind into the mix, slowing down Mississippi State. And in those games, by the way, going back to Bama and LSU for Miss State, Rodgers completed a whopping total of 54 out of 102 passes, barely above 50%. If the Bulldogs are focused, I think they handle this game without much trouble. I'm not a big Mike Leach fan.
Yeah. Mike Leach wins games sometimes that he's not supposed to win.
He does it like once a year. Yeah.
Yeah, he does it like once a year. He did it at Texas Tech. He did it at Washington State, and he's done it down here. But here's the caveat. This ain't one of them. You know, everybody's thinking about it. If you think, if you're from this frame of mind that you think coming off such a big emotional game that they're going to be a little sluggish coming out of the gate, might overlook them a little bit here, maybe take Mississippi State plus the 9.5 on the first half line. If you think that's going to happen, folks, I'll be shocked if Mississippi State has more than 20 points in this game. And I think that Georgia can put up as many as they want. You know, small lean here. Georgia's the best team in the country. And that final score last week was not indicative of the complete domination. I was hearing a bunch of crap this week. Well, since it was raining, it affected. No, it didn't. You got your ass kicked. You got out physical. You got beat in every facet of the game, including special teams. And quite frankly, Kirby Smart outcoached him big time. And I can guarantee you one thing. Mike Leach is kind of an anomaly in college football, and I got to admit, I enjoy him. I like his presser. Sometimes I'll just go on YouTube and watch him because the guy is just so bizarre at times. But he's actually a good football mind, you know, coming out of, you know, under Hal Mummy at Kentucky and all the things they've done. But the trickery does not work against Georgia. I'd lay it.
Georgia's going to have to be unfocused. They're going to have to be unfocused, you know.
And they're not going to be.
And we haven't seen this. We haven't seen Kirby Smart lose his team's focus off of anybody. And you know, I when I see Mike Leach, 7-5, 8-4, one major upset a year. So he's not a bad coach. You know, don't get me wrong.
Right.
He's a good coach. He's quirky, which he puts out those funny lines every once in a while. But to me, he's 7-5 or 8-4, and you know, one major upset per season. That's what he's made his career off of, and that's not bad to go 8-4 and 7-5 every season.
Yeah.
It's just I don't think going to get it done against the Georgia Bulldogs.
No, hell, I tell you what, we're both Husker fans. We take 7-5 in a bowl game every year. You know,
don't even have to pull a major upset.
Jiminy Christmas, we're gonna witness a 56-7 stomping this weekend. Trust me, we'd love to have 7-5 in Lincoln. Hell,
they're probably. You know, I was going to say they're probably fortunate that Scott Frost isn't on the sideline for this reason, because you get the feeling that Harbaugh doesn't like Frost over some of the things that have been said over the years, going back to the late 90s when Frost says, you know, we deserve the national title, which I agree with him. But anyway, I could see Harbaugh putting it to Nebraska, especially if Frost was on that other sideline still. He'd wipe his nose in it, man.
Frost in Nebraska beat Peyton Manning, and they beat Ryan Leaf. So yeah, we deserve the title. So
there you go.
At the end of Michigan, yeah. So switching gears, the NFL, Seattle, Tampa Bay. This one's in Munich, Germany. Another overseas game. I think NFL Network's carrying this one. Last week it was streaming only, and but Tampa Bay 2.5, 44.5. So I guess I'll put this to you, and you might even be looking at the total in this one, Scott. I don't know. Scott and I don't script this, as you can tell. But at the end of the day, if you're looking for a buy sign in this football game, the buy sign's on Seattle because it's not on Tampa Bay for me yet. Beating up on a dysfunctional Rams team, you know, is not a buy sign for Tampa Bay yet. They have absolutely no running game. And Scott, the other comment I was going to make, then I'll just hand it to you, as Tampa Bay here, as I mentioned, 2.5-point favorite and 44.5. I think that Pete Carroll, and I've never been a huge Pete Carroll fan. He's rubbed me the wrong way over the years, certain things. But I will give him this. I think this year is one of the best coaching jobs he's ever done.
Oh, yeah, no doubt about it. I agree with that 100%. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. You mentioned it's off to the motherland for me. It's Deutschland at 9:30 a.m. Eastern time on Sunday morning, 6:30 a.m. Pacific out here on the West Coast. I was trying to find reasons to go check out the so-called motherland. and the wife won't go because she hates the food. Can you believe that? She hates the food. Anyway, so Tony, you and I are going to go, and we're going to enjoy some of
Yeah.
the different beverages that we can find in Munich
Yeah.
one of these days. But anyway, listen, the Bucks haven't covered a number in 8 weeks, but you could really see the relief on their faces when they got that last minute final drive win last
Yeah.
week. Man, it's like Brady was like, holy cow, I just got the, 800-pound piano gorilla, whatever you want to call it, lifted off of my back. He and Byron Leftwich, coordinator, they're over there hugging on the sideline. It was really something to see this team, just that sigh of relief after they got that win. But here's the issue, and I'm a Brady fan. I'm like one of those only guys out there who I love to watch Brady play football. I don't care
Yeah.
about anything that's going on off the field. I love to watch the guy play football
Yeah.
because I like guys who try to be perfectionists. So and he does get ticked off, man. He gets pissed off at his teammates. That's what it takes to be a winning quarterback for 20 years. Pro
Yep.
athletes have a different mindset than us average human beings have. And again, I have no problem with the fire that comes out sometimes on the field from Tom Brady. But here's the problem. You can see the offensive line still not opening up running lanes. There's a big problem. Seattle can run the football. Tampa Bay can't. The Buccaneers are dead last. They're 32nd in yards rushing per game. They got Leonard Fournette, who can run you over like a freight train. And he still can't get yardage because of the offensive line. They can't stop the run either on defense. And Seattle, and I was going to mention this, and you brought it up, Seattle is one of the most well-coached football teams in the NFL this season. And I've always been a big Pete Carroll fan. He was fantastic, obviously, at USC, turning them from going to Las Vegas Bowl appearances into winning national or playing for national titles when he was at USC. And we've seen what he's done throughout his career here with Seattle. And how dare I question getting rid of Russell Wilson and keeping Geno Smith before the season began? Geno looks like an MVP candidate. That's how good Pete Carroll and his coaching staff is. And I was a big Geno Smith non-fan since about halfway through his final year at West Virginia. But anyway, listen, you've got Pete Carroll and his staff, and you already kind of hit on that. They're going up against Todd Bowles, who's got a 30-47 career head coaching record with the NFL. And he's got one winning season, and this is his 6th season as a head coach. That was his first year. Hasn't had a winning season since. And I'm sitting there, and that's another thing that bothers me, Tony. I'm going to go off on a little rant here. I'm listening to Tom Brady get hit left and right because people don't like the fact that the guy's won so much. So they nail him left and right. They don't like, oh, he's a mean guy on the side. Yeah, he's a winner. And so anyway, they don't like him. They blame him. They blame this. They blame that. Todd Bowles has been getting away with like hiding under the radar. This guy stinks as a head coach, his record. And I'm not saying he's a really good defensive coordinator. There's no doubt about it. But if we hung a sign up right now and said Peter Principle, you could put Todd Bowles' picture right by it. He stinks as a head coach. Let's call it like it is. Listen, I think Seattle goes into Tampa Bay and forces their style of play, and I think the game stays under 44.5. I think Seattle will be happy with being able to run the football. And, maybe Tampa Bay comes away with that win, but at 44.5, I think the game stays under the total.
Yeah, you think Geno Smith, even at West Virginia, and you and I are long in the tooth in this business, we were handicapping some guys in college that are now in the NFL Hall of Fame. That's how long you and I have been in the business. But I remember Geno Smith, and the biggest knock on him, and then when he went to the Jets and everywhere else he's been, he couldn't figure out how to read a defense. And Pete Carroll taught him how to read a defense. I mean, he did. And he obviously under Russell Wilson, the little toolage there, the guy, and they coached him up, and they got more weapons, in my opinion, equal weapons at wide receiver. DJ Metcalf, the Lockett, these guys are big play guys. And that's how they do it. They grind it out, running the ball, being physical, and then all of a sudden out of nowhere, they hit you over the top for a 40-yarder and the guy's wide open. And, Tampa Bay's been suspect to giving up big plays on defense this year too. So I would lean heavier on Seattle than you are. You're liking that under, but a Seattle win here by 7 to 10 points would not surprise me. You just wouldn't, and who's more disciplined? Who's more disciplined with their team in terms of going overseas and playing and getting everybody on the same page. It's not Todd
Right.
Bowles, it's Pete Carroll. That
Yep.
being said, I guess the next one's mine.
Yeah, it's Vikings at Buffalo, Tony. The Bills are laying 3.5. The total 44. Listen, the advanced number was 9.5. Obviously, at 3.5,
Yeah.
they're thinking that Josh Allen is not going to play, even
Yeah.
though most services will say that he's questionable right now. Potential UCLA. Potential. I'm thinking basketball right now. He's got a potential UCLA injury. How about a potential UCL injury? My gosh. Anyway, the bottom line is that we don't know exactly how serious it is as we cut this video midweek, but that line tells us that it's going to be Case Keenum at quarterback for the Buffalo Bills. Your thoughts on this one?
Well, Case Keenum can throw the ball to Stephon Diggs just as easily as Josh Allen can.
Mm-hmm.
They're banged up on defense, Buffalo, a little bit. They're going to get a little healthier this week. Yeah, they lost an ugly game last week. Josh Allen had a bad game. Patrick Mahomes had a bad game against the Colts. We never threw Kansas City under the bus when the Colts beat them. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
If you're throwing the Bills under the bus here, I'll tell you this much: Minnesota they're a one-loss team against two-loss team that actually the opener here was over 7. And the look-ahead line was 9. What's that tell you? Minnesota. But one thing I'll give them credit for: they find ways to win games, Scott, and it's not pretty, but they find ways to win games. Even with Zimmer last year, it seemed like every time you're watching the Sunday NFL Ticket on DirecTV, you're looking, and whatever the score was during the game, Minnesota was in an overtime game every single freaking week, or right down to the wire at regulation and, this, that, and the other here. But the one thing here, Buffalo, if they do have Keenum, they're going to play to their strength, which is going to be their defense here. Buffalo's 7-1 against the spread on the under. Minnesota had trouble moving the ball against Washington. A few other teams that did not have near as good a defense as these guys do. I like the under 43.5 in this game. And just for everybody out there watching, my power number on this with Buffalo playing at home is Buffalo minus 12. So is Josh Allen worth 8.5 points or 8 points? Case Keenum's capable. He's a capable quarterback, and you don't need to do a whole lot.
They're going to call the plays that fit what Case Keenum can do. He's not going to run the ball 10 times for 70 yards like Josh Allen.
Yeah.
But they're not going to throw a Josh Allen playbook at Case Keenum and say, okay, go out and get it done. If they did, I'd be on the Vikings for sure. But they're going to adjust and then see if he can get the job done if Josh Allen can't play.
Yeah, I think the under is going to be good there. It's going to be nice and cold up there, and all that Buffalo November weather too. And that's one thing that everybody watching, be sure when you're doing your own handicapping, even if it's, I know Scott and I got to have our picks out on Thursdays at Doc's. Every NFL game, every college game, we're going to the Weather Channel and looking up the local weather this time of year.
AccuWeather.com. I'll give everybody a tip if they don't already use it. AccuWeather.com. Hour by hour, they have hourly forecast, and believe me, when I see there's going to be a potential funky weather like rain or winds, I go to the hour-to-hour report, and I want to see how much of that game is going to be potentially affected by crappy weather. So AccuWeather.com, folks, if you're not already using it.
There you go, folks. And one more game here. We're going to talk about Green Bay and Dallas. Now, usually, Scott, I'm just making a general comment here. Usually in the NFL, which is what makes our job so frustrating, is I'm sure Jim Feist told you, Mike Lee told me, these are guys, we were younger guys, and these were older guys that were established guys. Dave Koken, a friend of yours, Larry Ness, friend of yours, friend of mine too. God rest his soul. They always, and I'm sure you heard this too, never put stock, Tony or Scott, in what you saw last week in the NFL, because these teams are Jekyll and Hyde every week. You got to look at right here, right now. Don't put some, because these teams can do a complete 180. Well, I got news for you, Scott. Green Bay does not fit that mold. They have consistently sucked the entire year. And last week was just another debacle. Not so much defensively, because they are decent defensively, but at the end of the day, this is a team in disarray. Dallas off a bye week, laying 5 up in Lambeau, total 43. Your thoughts?
Green Bay made my Westgate and Circuit contest cards last week. Unfortunately, I thought that would be the
Hey,
spot
I
if they
had
were
him
going
as
to
a
bust out. Did you?
I had him as a premium, and I wrote this down here. I had him. That's the only loss I had in Circa. I went 4-1. Here's the
Nice.
thing. I thought I was going to be real smart, Scott, and I was going to out trick everybody, including the books. Everybody's down on them. Here they come. Rodgers, there's no frickin' way he's going to lose to Detroit. You know, I'm outsmarting everybody. They're going to go in there. They're going to beat them 27 because the worst defense in the NFL is frickin' Aaron Rodgers. The guy's going to the Hall of Fame. No, they just suck.
Yeah, it's time to admit that the Green Bay Packers and Aaron Rodgers are not a good football team. Here's the thing. Tom Brady, I mentioned, I think he still has it. I really do. He just has to get an offensive line to open up some running lanes so he can, take advantage of that in the passing game. And obviously, we've also seen some really good Tampa Bay wide receivers dropping some open passes. We saw another touchdown drop last week. I don't think Aaron Rodgers is in that mix. I think Aaron Rodgers is not playing well. He's part of the reason Green Bay's struggling. He is missing receivers on occasion, guys that are open. He's throwing behind him. He's missing these guys. And he's taking it out on his receivers on the sideline when he's messing up, not when they're messing up, which is a little bit scary. They've lost, 5 straight games. They get held to less than 10 points against Detroit. And normally this is a situation in the NFL where you want to jump on that team that lost while scoring, such few points. The defense isn't bad against the pass, but you can run on them. Dallas can run, not so hot through the air. I think there's going to be a whole lot of running. There's going to be short passes. I think Green Bay is going to have to throw short passes. I think that clock keeps moving, and I think this game stays under 43. So for me, it's like, I haven't decided on the side yet. I may have had my stomach full of Green Bay after last week, but as far as the total is concerned, I do believe it stays under.
Combined 11-5-1 against the spread. These two on unders this year.
There you go. Let's keep it going that way.
That supports you there. McCarthy returning to the team that fired him. I think this is his first game in Green Bay since he was fired. I think that adds a little fuel to the fire. And I'll tell you what, Scott, just on talking about Dallas a little bit, if you struggled against Detroit's defense, Dallas gets after the quarterback. They have a good defense, and their secondary's been covering well this year. And the other thing, too, is I know Zeke's going to be coming back and probably getting some limited touches this week. I have no problem with Pollard at running back for them. As a matter of fact,
I like Pollard. Yeah,
than Elliott. He's more explosive than Elliott. I think he gives them a bigger play capability in the running game. And if you get him out in space catching balls, he's got speed, man. He's going to give them and bear in mind also Green Bay. As you can tell, I'm leaning Dallas here. But Green Bay lost Jones to an injury, their best running back, and now their best linebacker's out. It's just not good news in Lambeau for Green Bay fans, Scott.
Yeah, the frozen turf and the sinking of a ship right now, basically, in Green Bay is what it's been this season. Hey, guys, don't forget that free $60 account that you can see at the top of your screen, because if you click on the link, you will be able to sign up for a free $60 account if you're not yet a member at DocSports.com. And what that means is you can use those free $60 on any of Tony's daily packages or any of mine. Got a main event going this week in college football. It's been a great football season. We're up about $5,000. And I did go 3-1 last week in football.
Yeah.
Couldn't shake not being able. And 9-2, by the way, on top plays in college football, but I did lose the top play last week. So we're 9-2 there. And going back to the Bulls, Tony, late bowl season, now 30-16 and up almost $7,000 in college football. So, you're not going to get 15 to 18 games for me, but you will get 4 or 5 in college. and you will get 3 to 5 in the NFL every week. And of course, all of our plays available on Thursday. But don't forget about that free $60 account. What you got going this week, Mr. Tony George?
Well, I may just have one play on Sunday, and it will be my NFL game of the year.
There you go.
So that's going
Do
out
I get a
last week.
do I get a phone call before the game kicks off or a text?
Yeah,
okay, cool.
I'll text you. I'll text you. I know you work through the night, so I'll text you tonight around midnight, 1 o'clock when you're getting ready to, have that highball by the pool after you got your picks turned in, Scott. But yeah,
there you go. You know me well.
Yeah, I do know you well. And we had a losing week last week, a bad week in football, and we've been tearing it up. We're still 10-3 the last 4 Saturdays in college football. We just went 1-2 last week, and then on Sunday I only had 2 picks. I had Green Bay, and I had Tampa Bay as a 6-unit play, which pushed, and dumped on some props too. So it just wasn't my week in the NFL and college, but we're well over 60% in both on the year and plugging along, and we still got a 20-7 run with those college football top picks. I have a big 6-unit play on at least a 3-pack on Saturday. And I may have 1 or 2 games on Sunday, but we're yanking the trigger this weekend in the NFL for the one and only game of the year. So be sure and get over to Docs. Take it. You can get it for free. Mostly free. A weekend package in football is what, $99 over there. We give you 60.
Right.
You get the entire weekend of football for. I went to University of Nebraska for 6 years. I got a 2-year degree, but I think that's $39. I think that's $39.
So you're the one. The N stands for knowledge. The N on the side of the helmet stands for.
That's
you're
right.
The one. Okay.
That's right.
Anyway, he's Tony George. I'm Scott Spreitzer. Don't forget about the daily sports, man. College baskets, NBA, soccer, all that good stuff. NHL over at DocSports.com. You know what to do, everybody. Let's put them in the win column.